All righty, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Is this, this may or may not be judges. But you guys can probably hear me pretty well. So welcome. We are at the SAEM MedEd Showcase for 2025. It's going to be really exciting. So what we're going to do today is we are going to highlight some of the most innovative technology-enhanced approaches to medical education in emergency anywhere. We've got 3 outstanding educators who are going to present their work, and the winner is going to be selected based on input from our judges, who I'll introduce in just a second, as well as all of you. So we're really glad that you're here. Please stick around to the end. Before we begin, though, I'm going to introduce our 4, I've got a bio for you, too. All right, 4 judges. They bring in just an incredible depth of experience and insight into medical education, and they're going to add a lot of really great insights to this. So first, starting your right to left, Dr. Jeffery Hill. He's an associate professor at the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Cincinnati, where he completed his residency training as well as a master's of medical education. He's been involved in residency leadership since then and has a particular focus on resident bedside teaching in boarded emergency departments, which I think we're all familiar with, facilitated educational interventions, and his scholarly work includes original publications on the development and validation of a lecture-based assessment tool using Slack. So, Jeff, thanks for being here. We're moving right on to Dr. Andy Little. He's the program director at the Advent Health Florida EM residency in Orlando, Florida. He received his medical degree from Ohio University's Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine and completed his EM residency in 2016 at Doctors Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, where he served as chief resident. He has research interests and experience in airway management, in vascular access, in podcasting, and in educational delivery models. And he's received several prestigious awards, a lot of which are listed here, but I just want to say I think you and I, back many years ago, were part of the inaugural class of EMRA's 45 under 45. We are no longer under 45. No longer. Dr. Lauren McCafferty is an assistant professor of emergency medicine at the University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center, where she serves as APD, ultrasound fellowship director, and ultrasound education director for the Department of Emergency Medicine. She received her medical degree from the University of Kentucky and did her EM residency and ultrasound fellowship at University Hospitals Cleveland Medical Center. She focuses on ultrasound education and quality assurance, curricular innovations, FOAMed, and digital technology and social media and medical education, so she is absolutely perfect to judge here. And last but not least, Dr. Aalap Shah is currently an associate professor at Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. He serves as the director of the Emergency Ultrasound Fellowship and is core faculty for the Emergency Medicine Residency. He also serves on the SAEM AEUS Digital Social Media Committee, as well as the SAEM Education and Virtual Presence Committee. He's been editor-in-chief of the ultrasound education website, holocitysono.com, and has been a regular contributor to FOAMed across the world. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to have 3 great presenters, and I'll introduce them in just a second. But we have Dr. William Mehring from Stanford, Dr. Chris Nash from Duke, and Dr. Claire Milam from MUSC. So we'll welcome you up one at a time. We've got all your PowerPoints loaded up, and we will start with Dr. William Mehring. He is an EM resident, by the way, so come on up, Dr. Mehring. He's an EM resident at Stanford. I'll let you pull that up while I keep yapping on. He earned his MD and MBA at USC and works at the intersection of clinical care, digital health, and innovation. His focus is on how technology can reshape healthcare delivery and medical education with ongoing work in digital health solutions, medical education innovation, and early stage venture development. All you, my friend.
All right, thank you. So, howdy everyone. As you now know, my name is Will Mehring. I'm an intern actually at Stanford, and this is actually my first time at SAEM. So, like any intern, I came prepared with a granola bar in my pocket, a healthy dose of imposter syndrome, and a lot of gratitude for attending, so willing to let me present. So, thank you for that. With that being said, today I'll be talking about building an immersive digital health elective in residency training. So, no financial disclosures. And I'll begin by setting the stage. So, we all see images and headlines like this almost every day now. AI-driven drug discovery, clinical decision support, and wearable sensors for remote patient monitoring. The speed of technology adoption is truly breathtaking. Even 5 years ago, many of these advances lived only in academic journals or small pilots. Today, they're featured on live broadcasts or embedded in commercial EHR platforms and deployed in community clinics. But here's the hard question. Will the physicians of tomorrow be ready to harness these tools to improve patient care? And perhaps even more critically, can they communicate how to safely validate, deploy, and monitor these tools? So the core training that we face in medical training today is our residency programs are intensely focused on mastering bedside clinical skills, but they offer little structured education in digital health and technology. Meanwhile, clinical landscape is shifting. Those wearable biosensors, AI-powered triage engines, and personalized medicine platforms are everywhere. Every corner of patient care is becoming digital, and this creates a critical gap. New physicians arrive at their first jobs unprepared to leverage these tools or to drive innovation in their departments. That misalignment is exactly what motivated our team. What if we could embed EM residents right inside digital health companies, give them immersive, hands-on experiences that teach them to speak the language of developers, data scientists, and designers? In the next slide, I'll introduce our elective design to do just that. So first, each resident spent 2 to 4 weeks fully embedded in a leading digital health company. This wasn't a lecture series for them. It actually was their day job for the block. And second, we paired residents with high-impact projects with digital health leaders. From product road mapping to clinical validation plans, they owned real deliverables. Third, the goal was for them to work side by side with engineers, product managers, data scientists, and other clinicians, translating clinical needs into actual technical requirements. And finally, our goal is to have residents design and deliver tangible solutions. By rotation's end, they haven't just learned about digital health, they've actually built in digital health. So to illustrate the real-world impact of our elective, here are 3 resident engagements from last year. First, Council Health is a virtual care platform for personalized medical advice, where a resident partnered with their product team to design and launch new features for chronic disease management, mapping out clinical workflows, and drafting user stories. Next was Fabric, which is a digital platform for AI-enabled virtual and in-person care. I personally worked with them on clinical validation of an AI triage and telemedicine workstream, as well as large language model training. And lastly, we have Time Care, which does value-based oncology management, where a resident led a data-driven analysis of ED and inpatient readmission drivers among oncology patients. So through these projects, residents acquired a variety of skills in product development, clinical validation, and data analytics through hands-on experience. The goal is that they graduate not only with digital health competency, but with the capability to lead future innovation in emergency medicine. So here's a firsthand reflection from one of our participants at Council. They said, "I applied my clinical background to advise the design and prototyping of a generative voice AI feature to help Council Health intake and onboard new patients." This quote exemplifies the immersive, impact-driven learning we aim to deliver, because through experiences like this, our elective equips EM residents to bridge clinical care and health tech teams, serving as translators between patient needs and technical solutions. So let's talk about a little bit about where we're going. As we scale this elective, we're following a deliberative, iterative cycle to ensure it remains impactful and sustainable. So far, we've identified 8 prospective companies spanning the full spectrum of digital health, with 2 or 3 more projects actually planned by the end of this academic year. Second, we're refining the 2-week and 4-week elective structures by optimizing block length, project scope, and mentorship touchpoints to hopefully maximize learning and deliverable quality. And third, we're continuing data collection through resident self-assessments and host company surveys to evaluate both learner experience and organizational value. Ideally, this is going to create an iterative feedback loop in which insights from each cohort surveys will drive our next round of company selections and therefore curriculum tweaks. In this way, the elective will continuously evolve, grounded in real-world data, and be aligned with the needs of both the residents and our companies. So, as we wrap up, there are 3 core takeaways I'd like to leave you with. First, the idealized impact of what's going on here. Through this elective, our residents don't just observe innovation, they become the bridge between the bedside and the build. They attempt to translate real clinical pain points into product features and drive patient-centered solutions grounded in everyday ED needs. Second, we're hoping to reshape some medical education in the future of EM. By embedding hands-on interdisciplinary projects into residency, we hope to fundamentally transform training. Integrating technology equips emergency physicians to lead and not just react to our field's rapidly evolving digital health landscape. And third, I want to emphasize the role of EM physicians as consumers and contributors. Graduates will hopefully emerge not only as savvy users of digital health tools, but as active architects of those tools. This dual role fosters enduring collaboration and networking between healthcare and technology sectors, ensuring EM physicians drive rather than just follow the next wave of innovation. So I'd just like to tell you a quick thank you to my co-residents who helped make this possible through being amazing, outstanding, multifaceted professionals. Additionally, a big thank you to Dr. Rana Kabir, who's been an integral part of championing these opportunities within the department and a dedicated mentor helping me navigate these non-traditional spaces. So thank you very much.
Okay, don't go anywhere just yet. So, all right. First, let's kick it to the judges for their feedback and thought. We'll start at the end. Dr. Shah?
Can you guys hear me if I just shout? First of all, awesome presentation. I think this is super cool.
Thank you.
Obviously, like as we get into AI and the intersection with kind of the private sector and how that's going to get into our clinical practice, it's key to start this process early, right? When you're in training, and it's something that's been lacking. We've kind of been fumbling our way through it when we get it through training. So I love that idea. The question I had for you that I'm kind of most interested in is academic institutions and private sector. Finding the mix there can be challenging from an administrative standpoint. Like, how did you make that work? Are they actually using on their elective time like stuff that's going to be deployed at home, or it's kind of through this company entirely?
When you say deployed,
Like, are they using data that's obtained from Stanford, for example?
No,
or it's like through their company data?
Great question. Yeah. So in terms of the actual split between like Stanford and the companies themselves, these are all like work that's housed within the companies. And I know what you're saying about the kind of the challenge of separating academia and industry. And I think a lot of that has just been actually having EM physicians being embedded as employees of these companies because they understand, I think, a lot of that and want to have that kind of dual exposure to having an academic environment as well and having residents work with them. So a lot of it, I think, has been having stakeholders on the other side who kind of understand this environment and want to continue with that.
Dr. McCafferty?
I think this is amazing. It's very visionary. It's very timely. I love how it provides your residents with a really great experiential learning opportunity that prepares them to not only be to have the skill set to not just adapt but also be solution oriented when they're facing a lot of the ongoing challenges that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. I'm really curious to see, and I don't know if you have plans to do this, but how are you planning to measure outcomes and impact? Like down the road, are you looking to see if people have more leadership roles in these areas, or? I think that's a really great opportunity for you to looking ahead, because especially since you're only an intern.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And to think about the long-term scaled out effects of this, like how many people are going into innovation fellowships or doing actual technology work after they graduate. Right now, in terms of the actual development of the program, the data collection is coming in the form of surveys. So giving the residents that are working at these companies like a baseline survey, like what is your competency in this field, in this area, and then having them fill that out again after they're completed with the project. And then also giving the surveys to the companies as well to understand like what they got out of the experience. And I think that was part of that iterative cycle that we're trying to work on.
Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Little?
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of good things here. It checks a lot of boxes. The one thing I would ask, is there any discussion of maybe partnering with a large community EM program to see if this is applicable to the, because I feel like there's always the delta between large academic university hospital and then large maybe county community type hospital, knowing that the resources and their patients interface differently. So there's been a discussion of taking this to a different shop and seeing what's reproducible.
It's a great question because I understand the differences in those centers and like how, I guess, the motivations may be different as well. With that being said, I think in terms of a Stanford-centric view, it doesn't necessarily need to be a large academic center. It just needs to have buy-in from faculty. It just needs to have like the permission for residents to be able to take on these opportunities and to let them kind of define what innovation looks like and define what their educational experience is going to look like. But with that being said, I hear you on the jumps that might be challenging. It would be a great pilot to do at a community center.
Dr. Hill?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I special kudos for using a pretty rigorous curriculum development process to iterate on this and make it more more easy for it to kind of continue going on forward in the future. As one question would be these projects and like the idea sources for these, are these typically projects within these healthcare companies that are existing, or do you find that residents are able to like have an idea and then go to a company and then work through that process?
Yeah, a great question. The way that it's been the most successful so far has actually been to have residents, because we have these limited amounts of time, right, as residents, where you have a 2-week or 4-week elective block. The best way to do it has actually been to have residents engage with whatever kind of supervisory role will be on the other side, and have them start to plan out what they're going to do once they hit the ground. So that way they can hit the ground running. And most of the time it is probably generated from the company side. But with that being said, I think there's a little bit of an ability to align both those parties to kind of understand what they want to do, and then what also would be like a purposeful thing. Because that's really what I'm getting back to here, is you want to be purposeful and have impact in what you're doing and gain that experience. Just like milling out Excel tables or pivot tables or something is not a meaningful experience for a resident. So there is a lot of, I think, alignment together to figure out how that goes.
Nice job. All right. Great feedback, judges. Thank you. Nice job. All righty. Next. So that's one down, but stick around because voting's at the end. Next, we have Dr. Christopher Nash. He's an assistant professor and core faculty at Duke University Hospital. He completed a residency at the Harvard-affiliated Emergency Medicine Residency at MGH and Brigham and Women's, followed by a master's in education and a medical education fellowship at Harvard. He's currently NBME Strategic Educators Enhancement Fellow, that's fancy, and where he's exploring the use of large language models in medical education assessment. Dr. Nash also contributes to curricular development for the U.S. Army Special Operations Combat Medic Course, and serves as an Associate Director for Growth for ALIEM and Chief Technology Officer for ALIEM University, which provides free e-learning resources for health professions learners. Dr. Nash, come on up.
So one thing I want to check real quickly is if there's a mechanism to get the V2. So if not, I'm going to wing it. Let's see, so re-download. This is not part of the talk.
Oh, now the mic's working, so feel free to use it.
Hey. All right, so V2 is downloading. We're almost there. Everyone stare at me while I wait for this. Just one moment. And then, let's try that. All right, let's do this one instead. Great. And then presenter view, and there we go. All right, so as was mentioned by Dr. Raja, my name's Chris Nash. I'm one of the core faculty at Duke. And this project is sort of a chance to present something I've been working on through the MBME, through that C fellowship he was discussing. And the goal of that program is, in general, to try and foster new ways of innovating within medical student assessment, or assessment in general. So I have no disclosures, but I will mention, because this is AI topics, this is going to be mentioning some very specific companies, just since that's what we had utilized, but we got no money from them, unfortunately. All right, so this is a group of 4 of us. There's 8 of us total in the fellowship, but you kind of see that they're from multiple different parts and multiple different schools around the country. Tom Atay is at the University of Kentucky, and he is their clinical skills director, which gave us access to all of their OSCE notes for the medical students. And the driver behind this problem, our big pie in the sky idea, was how can we use AI in order to sort of assess how people make clinical judgment? How is it that we can assess clinical reasoning? Which is a much bigger problem to tackle than where we started, which was, okay, can we start just by using the data we have and looking at medical student OSCE notes? Because frankly, it's a big process for any institution to try and make grading happen for, you imagine, your 3rd year or 4th year rotations when you're doing your summative assessments at the end of the year. You'll do 9, 10 OSCEs. Imagine if you do that times 150 students or what have you, 160 at University of Kentucky, how much time that takes your faculty to grade. And just to give you a sense of roughly how much that costs with, I guess, pediatrics value of the time per hour, we're looking at $55,000-ish a year. So this is a big problem. And most importantly, it's not utilizing your educators at their most useful. It's putting them on a task that ideally, if we could get this offloaded, would free them up to have more student-facing time. Additionally, there's something about how it is that students are graded. This is an example, a screenshot from University of Kentucky's system that they use to do their OSCE grading. Look at that lovely feedback. Missed thyroid exam, agree. So that's not useful feedback, right? That is not something that a student's going to take something away from and grow. So what do? We built a program using ChatGPT, most of this written in Python, to try and take a stab at uploading our rubrics, or rather UK's rubrics, and seeing how well ChatGPT would do at grading. We're able to export their data directly from Learning Space, which is their learning management software, and then we just formatted the notes into a way that was more usable. Their note templates have sort of some shared features across their different cases. So if you've got flank pain cases, nausea vomiting cases, etc., all the individual rubrics that they have do share these domains, we'll call them, like history documentation, what's their physical exam like, but then there's features that are peculiar to every case. So that's going to be your history documentation for flank pain is clearly going to be different than what you're going to try and pick up on if it's a DKA case or something like this. And so we tried to put those all into, just to jump back, a standard rubric which shared those cases, those shared features, and then features that are specific to those individual cases. Once we then abstracted all of those for all of their students, we would take them and then combine them into text ready for the LLM, broken down with basically prompt chaining, and then ask ChatGPT to grade, and we saw what they did. What we were most interested in is, I mean, you can go on right now, you can pull out your phone, you can pull up your internet browser, upload a rubric, upload a note, and say, go, grade it. And I mean, it's gonna do it. You have no sense, unless you're looking very closely at it, if it's accurate. You have no sense if that's gonna be fair to your students. So we're trying to quantify that process. Once we have all of these notes then abstracted, once we have all the grading rubrics put into a format that can be used by the machine, and once we have all those individual parts that are not shared among the rubrics available, you can then run them through Python, use the OpenAI API, and then get some outputs. And you can do this for each student note, and we chose to do this based off some prior work done by Chris Runyon at NBME, to do this one domain at a time, because we know there's less error if you chunk up processes done by an LLM. Lastly, all you do once it's done, I mean, it's a single line of code once you have it set up, which is amazing. In terms of actually executing it, there's a lot more code on the back end. But then what? Like, so what? If I say that I can do this, I just told you if you do this individually, ChatGPT uploading and just seeing what happens, it'll work. So we need to figure out whether or not it's valid, whether or not it's reliable, replicable. That's what we did. So the first thing we did was we looked at how did the humans do compared to each other. This is actual real-world data from the University of Kentucky, and their interclass correlation, which is similar to an IRR, except it's for basically non-binary data. And a 0.88 correlation is actually incredibly high, so good for Kentucky. Also, it makes you think, how did that happen? That's like really, really high. We kind of delved into it a little bit. They probably kind of cheated. Like, they saw the first grade, thought, yeah, that looks good. They do the second one. You can get pretty good agreement if you just choose what the previous person had chosen when they graded the note. LLM to LLM, we looked at, okay, well, if the same note is graded 20 times, 30 times by the LLM, how much does it agree with itself? And actually, that was pretty good too. That's the interesting thing to me, 0.76. And on the scale, this is actually, just trust me, promise, that's pretty good correlation. But why isn't it 100? Like, why isn't it perfect? And it has to do with their rubrics, which are more holistic in nature. If you have a rubric that looks like this, almost all key information is present. Most key findings are there. Many key findings are there. There's some subjectivity to that. And that's why there's some you would expect more subjectivity among the humans too, which is part of why we got a little suspicious that maybe they're kind of looking over each other's shoulders. But if we look at an example from a student note, patient reports these symptoms started yesterday as right-sided pain. Every 1 to 2 hours, there's a spasm. He had pain with urination, and the pain is so intense that he will have nausea and vomiting spasms. Well, okay, maybe we can say almost all key findings are present. Most key findings are present. If you look at what the actual output is of ChatGPT done twice, and these are individual instances with their own seeds. Well, one of them says, yep, everything's there. That's a 4. The other one says, lacks some minor details, because it didn't say it was severe, which was a required element on our rubric. It just said it was so bad that he doubled over, which a human might interpret as, okay, that meets it or it doesn't. It just depends on how hawkish you are. So it's interesting, in a way, it actually behaves quite human-like, right? So then we looked at, okay, humans are here, LLMs are here, both agreeing internally with each other pretty well, which is a necessary but not enough kind of thing to have. Well, they don't agree with each other. So what the heck happened there? And what we learned is, if you look at them and look at the actual grades that they give, overall, humans are really generous at the University of Kentucky, which makes sense, right? Like, these are going to be on their students' final sort of summative assessments of who they are. And when they apply to residency, you may opt toward maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. ChatGPT didn't care. It says that's what it is, and that's what I'm going to give you. The interesting thing, though, is if you actually correlate them with the Spearman coefficient, they rank similarly, which means that although the absolute score is different, we can see that their order is pretty similar. It's actually pretty exciting because it means that this is a process that has some potential at least. Maybe this is something that we can do and just adjust the cutoff point, which you can do mathematically. The other interesting thing we learned is that by individual rubric domain, there are some places where there's more or less agreement between ChatGPT and humans, which means that you can do one of two things. One, you've got some targets for your rubric that you can improve, or those are some areas that you might want to train your humans a little bit better just for more consistency. So in the future, we're going to see more and more things that will be utilizing this type of technology. And on the back end, we need to make sure that if we're going to be grading students, especially in a summative way, not so much a formative way, in other words, just for feedback, it behooves us and is actually incumbent upon us to make sure it's safe and fair. To that end, part of our goal is to make it so that people don't have to do this all on their own. I've put all of what I have done in a sample format up on GitHub so people can download it and modify it for their own uses. That's what makes this a product for this presentation. We're going to continue doing this work. We're looking forward at whether or not we can get access to higher quality data. I would love NBME step data. They are not going to give it to me, but we'll try. This is our group, led by Drs. Larry Gruppen at Michigan and Dean Kogan at Penn, and then our group of folks. That's my talk.
Nice work, Dr. Nash. All right, let's go to the judges again. This time we'll start on this side. Dr. Hill.
Thank you very much. I think that this type of work definitely shows the promise of AI in terms of taking a process that is relatively laborious and trying to automate it in a way that can really help save time for folks. One question I had was with medical students and grades, there's often confidentiality concerns and FERPA concerns. Have you encountered that with IRB involvement at all?
Yeah. So the question in general relates to privacy, which comes up a lot with these. Just to abstract it again for a second from the actual question, the concern is that maybe AI will use the data to train future stuff, which is some of the concerns that the New York Times have, that all these other companies have when they're filing these copyright claims against these companies. I think that there's always some risk. It's never zero. When you use de-identified just student notes from fake encounters, I think it's less important, but it's something to be concerned about. And when we abstracted, there's no student data associated with it. It's simply just notes. That said, you could, and I'll talk about this again in another talk later, but another option is you can run local models, and I would expect that they would perform similarly. They would need to be tested, and they would also maybe get around some of the problems with models change over time too. So you want to make sure that data is comparable from session to session, year to year.
Nice.
Dr. Little.
Skynet has launched. I'm sorry, that's a reference to the 80s. I apologize. To me, the question is that where's the translation to the EM residency in the future? Would you see this as a tool to where programs can maybe build a model using ABEM's oral board rubric and then perform oral boards and then input that data to predict how people will perform in the same kind of setting? Or
I have to admit, I hadn't considered boards. My imagining had been clerkships. So what that would be is you have students who write notes for patients, and this is the part where they get their privacy. They're never looked at. There's never feedback given. So both for formative reasons and also something to actually get a sense of an objective way of evaluating students. That's to me the translation.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was going to be, sorry. That was going to be my question too, is are you planning to translate this to another format like residency education or, like faculty assessment, whether that's like an OSCE format or just written evaluations? I thought you did a really great job of clearly explaining your process and being very transparent about that. I was curious, one thing that came up, because I know this is a big thing in AI now, is the concept of bias and how that plays a role. And I liked how you de-identified all of the student notes, because I know sometimes when you input a male or female, as the person doing the or performing the OSCE, that might be interpreted differently by the AI tools and LLMs. So I thought that was another really great component to that. And I think it takes out a lot of the human bias that can be brought into evaluations when, your personal experiences with that student maybe in the past, whether good or bad.
I would love to see prospective, and this is something I would love to do at some point, of comparing if we have real world data that is both done by hand the traditional way and with the machine. yes, machines are definitely biased, but so are the people who are otherwise our baseline that we're comparing to. So who knows, is it more or less biased? It's important to acknowledge that it exists, regardless of where you land on that.
Thanks. Dr. Shaw, finishing it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just shout. I'll echo the same thing that a lot of these guys kind of talked about. I think it's one thing that stood out to me is that we spent all this time on projects like this training the LLMs, but like, what are we training the humans who are doing the grading? And that's obviously going to be highly variable, over from institution to institution. So there's definitely some room for improvement there as well alone. But more importantly, one area that I think would be interesting to kind of look at to evaluate students is like, how is their actual medical decision making, right? Like they can hit all these points on the OSCE. Did you guys take a look, or do you have plans to look at like their actual integration of that material?
You mean like in the real world clinic?
Or even like as part of like the end of that note, like where they like come up with a diagnosis.
So the plan is part of the rubric. So their medical decision making is included in that. It was among the more medium correlation with humans in terms of how it all shook out. What I was actually just thinking about was the human or the training of the graders. That's another piece that I think is so easy to translate. Just have them do it, see how they compare to the LLMs, and use that as feedback. It'd be a really good training tool. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Nash. All right, last but definitely not least, we have Dr. Claire Milam. Yeah, come on up. Am I pronouncing Milam? Is it perfect? Awesome, thank you. Who's assistant professor and director of medical student global EM education at MUSC. While a medical student herself at the Indiana University School of Medicine, she went to Kenya for 2 months, solidifying her interest in global health. She completed her EM residency at Carolinas Medical Center, followed by a fellowship in global emergency medicine at MUSC, where she is now faculty and part of the division of global EM. She focuses on education and capacity building. It's all yours.
Cool, thank you. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Claire Milam. First of all, your guys' projects are really very impressive. So thank you for including me in this talk. I'm going to shift a little bit. So this is about portable ECG in a low resource setting. So it's going to be focusing a lot on the use of technology for global health and how we kind of incorporate that in our medical student education. I also have no disclosures and will mention some specific products that we don't get funded. So if anybody has a connection, let us know. Just a little background. So this is the facility that we work with in Gisondi, Uganda, which is a small rural town about 6 hours outside of Kampala. And it is a pretty small medical center. It does have inpatient beds, but definitely not a referral center. We send second year and fourth year medical students as well as residents. Actually, one of our now fellows, but when she was a resident, rotated there. And for my fellowship, which was right around COVID, I went back to do sort of a needs assessment. And in that time, they were like, we would like help with cardiovascular disease and EKGs. And so I got there, and the EKGs that they were using were the bulb reusable EKGs, and the machine had been broken, so they hadn't done an EKG in multiple years. And so at that time, there was also Prisma that was, going pretty frequently prior to COVID, and they had proposed and taken over a 6-lead Cardia EKG. So I don't know how often you guys have seen these or how many patients come in saying, hey, I have an AFib, my Cardia told me. But we sort of utilized this as a bridge until we could figure out what's the next step for getting an EKG, because we didn't want to just buy a new EKG machine that would break again, and then how do you kind of translate that? And so we trained a research coordinator, basically, who's kind of on the ground, into how to do these 6-lead EKGs that would go onto our tablets and then upload them, de-identified and everything like that, so that we could review them. And then we had a medical student actually go over and do sort of a needs assessment of his own and a little bit of implementation science, and figured out, how do we get a 12-lead that we can potentially do quality improvement, quality assessment, that isn't just going to break and they're not going to be able to do EKGs again. And so he found this 12-lead system that one of the doctors that we worked with said, hey, when I was a resident in Kampala, this is what we used, maybe we could consider that. And so he was able to work with this rep, make sure that it was in country, make sure it was sustainable, we could replace all the items, things like that. And this was a fourth-year student who ended up going into surgery. So I know it doesn't end up being emergency medicine education, but the thing that was really great is that because they're medical students and they're just interested in global health, it applies to a lot of different types of medical students. And then once the residents get over there, they're able to kind of narrow down to more acute care. So this was really a very exciting moment for us when we actually got it over there. And this is the medical student and one of our research coordinators doing the first 12-lead EKG in like 3 years. So it was just a very, very fun, and that's one of our clinical officers as well. And so then we were able to sort of train our Ugandan colleagues on how do we take this information and upload it so that we can use it to better educate based off of the population that we're treating. And so you can sort of see here that they're inputting the data, we're using this mobile app that doesn't have to be online, and then we have, just pages and pages and pages of de-identified EKGs for our medical students to, have access to and to help create lectures. Our residents have helped create lectures. What we found in our needs assessment is that our providers over there are kind of at the level of a medical student when it comes to reading an EKG. So we felt that that was actually, what we first did was throw it up to all the attendings and we were like, hey, can you create a lecture on bradycardia? And it was so high level for like a second, third year EM resident. And then we had a medical student do one on VTAC and we were like, wow, she just did such a good job breaking it down, making it palatable for people who haven't done EKGs. That's how we kind of went forward with that. And so just some of our student engagement. This is a medical student, second year, interested in cardiology, who is going through an EKG that was taken at Gisondi, uploaded, identified, and you can sort of see he's got his little marker here, and he's giving a lecture. Then over there was the just worksheets that the medical students helped make as part of this education process. So that was like the big chunk of it initially, was these students being able to learn, translate that into teaching, but there's also the implementation part of it for our fourth year, and now they've had some research opportunities and being able to work with our global health partners, which has been a really fun experience. So they're kind of not like super advanced technology, but it's being used, I hope, in a way that is translatable to other types of programs and help engage medical students. Yes. Questions, advice? Does anybody work for any of these companies? I would love to talk.
I'll do this so nothing's shining in your eye. All right, that was fantastic. Thank you. Let's go and kick it back to the judges. Dr. Shah, we'll start with you on that end again.
Sure. I'll start by saying, great project. I think it's nice we talk about EM a lot, but it's nice to engage all levels of learners because it's really important in the House of Medicine to be able to have that knowledge. I also really like that you focus on sustainability, right? Like with global health, advanced technology that they're not either going to be able to use or doesn't have Wi-Fi connectivity or breaks, can't be replaced, is like essentially useless to them. So it's really nice to meet them at that level. The question that I had for you is on the back end of reviewing these ECGs, what does that look like for you, and what does that process actually feel like?
So that is our next project that we're looking at. So of how do we QA this? And I don't have the perfect answer yet. I was able to actually recently, so because we're still working on giving them confidence to read these EKGs without just trusting the computer, because I was finding that the computer interpretation was actually often not correct. So I was able to kind of go back and just personally review them and say, okay, at least when the computer is saying sinus rhythm, that's correct. And I was able to communicate that with them because we have a WhatsApp group that they send me EKGs that they have questions for. We have a team that can look at them and do a little bit of QA, but that is definitely the next part of this, and of how do we actually do that very effectively and give them more confidence so that we can sort of step out of the picture.
Makes sense. Dr. McCafferty?
I love this. I have a soft spot in my heart for working in low resource settings. I've had the great fortune to be able to do a little bit of work with that. So I know the challenges that come with trying to, build something from nothing, especially, things that we take for granted every day in the U.S. It's just a challenge. So I love your project. I love how you brought students into the learning process, not just for more relatability in terms of, lecture material, but also a kind of a pipeline for, investment in the future. And, the more you get students into the global health setting, I feel like the more they're going to go out and stay involved as faculty, and then inspire future learners as well. So I really like that too. My question kind of is similar to Aalap's, but in terms of your ongoing education, like what does that process look like? Do you go back multiple times throughout the year, or is it more remote learning like through Zoom, or?
So it's going to be definitely a combination. So right now, the entire facility that we work at is going through some changes, and so I think our plan initially was the initial education piece was like a 6-week virtual. We sent them 4 different modules. We sent them lectures. We met after each one. We reviewed EKGs over the TV, Zoom. I don't know how to say that. Sorry. Virtually. Yeah, there we go. And then the reality is I just don't have a lot of time to go back all the time. So I go back about once a year, and we're going to go back this fall. Actually, more so with the nursing team, so that the nurses are going to teach the nurses. But I'm going to try and spend some of that time to do some more assessment. And then since then, we've also had multiple virtual meetings where we're just like, hey, is this working? What do we need to do? So I guess to answer your question, most of it is virtual. But I would love for it to be more in person if possible.
Dr. Little?
Yeah, no, this falls into there's the two types of innovations, and one is new things, new toys, and you've decided to take an old technology and reinstate it in a setting where people don't use it. So I love that that's what you guys chose to do, rather than try to find a big $1 million fix for this. There are cheap fixes. So my question would be, when we talk about who's getting comfortable with EKGs, is there discussions, say you just mentioned you're taking nurses, is there a discussion on increasing who is going to be interpreting these at the bedside, that we benefit from having techs, nurses, and other non-physician people involved in EKG obtaining and interpretation? Is that another plan for
That
our
is-
next phase?
Yes.
Okay.
So right now, I think we're really trying to champion our medical officers, which is the physicians on site.
Yeah.
And it is like a hub and spoke model. So this was, piloted at the larger setting, but there are smaller clinics, and so then we want to get those medical officers involved, and then go to the clinical officers. But I've already talked to our nurses that are interested in this about, hey, how do we do nursing education for this? Because I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
The reality is they're not there yet. But we did spend quite a bit of time making sure that all of the nurses actually know how to obtain an EKG.
Yeah, which is good. Okay.
And I'll say that took a year.
Yeah. it's a good time.
But now they can all do one, which is honestly
good.
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah.
That is great. Yeah, thanks. Dr. Hill, rounding it out.
Great project. Really love that you've used some of these EKGs as like a learning case bank for them to help. It's always good to have those real cases in their memory that you can leverage. Have you? I guess my question is almost more on the operational side. I think about these different devices, and all technology breaks in some way. And so whether there's a cost differential between the varying devices and how long they will last, and the clinical utility of them, because obviously a 12 lead is better than a 6 lead, than an Apple Watch, that sort of thing. But I don't know if you've looked at that at all yet.
So yes, the Cardia is a little bit more problematic because it's not made in country. And you have to actually download the app in the United States. So that part, again, was a little bit inherited. We're like, okay, but let's work with it. And they're about $100 or $150, which is pretty cheap. And for the first 2 years, I think we had 2 Cardias, and I have one that is broken. And it's just, the replacement is just a little nickel battery. But one of the things that we were trying to look at is what can we actually obtain from the 6 lead? Because if we can compare that to the 12 lead and at least find things where we're saying this is an acute emergent condition that you do need to refer to the bigger center, even if it's not going to pick up the small, channelopathies, then would that be useful in those small clinics? As opposed to the 12 lead, which is a little bit more expensive, a little bit more training. And we don't have an answer quite yet, but something that we have comparison studies that we're looking at, actually with she was our medical student, now she's our resident. And then for the 12 lead, I think, Alex, who again is now a surgeon, but did a really nice job making sure that there was someone in country and that they could get all the replacement parts. And actually it's I know this is a technology, it's actually pretty low tech. It's like Bluetooth and uses a battery. And then the leads are nice because they actually have adapters to be able to use the suction bulb if they need to, but they just use little alligator clips otherwise.
Nice work, Dr. Mal. That was fantastic. All righty, so that rounds us out, which means that we're on for the voting. So here's the way that it works. It's going to be 50-50 in terms of the audience vote and the judges vote. So we're going to start with the judge vote first. And so before we give the audience the QR code and do all this, we'll go to the judges. And judges, take a second. And we're going to go with, in this order, that you can't see the screen, but actually, are you guys going to collaborate?
Yeah, we're
Ooh, all right, this is novel. In the past, they've done one at a time, but now they're going to collaborate. Collaborate away.
There's some plausible deniability if we do it this way.
Less liability. So while they're collaborating, then at the same time, we're going to put this up just to save you all some time. So these were our three presenters: Dr. Mehring, Dr. Milam, Dr. Nash. I accidentally got them out of order. Sorry about that, but that's the order. 50% judges, 50% audience, and while you are casting your vote, you're so fast with the QR codes. If anybody needs help with the QR coding, just ask the resident next to you. There's a lot of collaborating going on over here, but clearly it was a hard decision because all three presentations were awesome. All right, judges, have you come to a decision? Okay, hold on. Have you come to a decision first? Oh, all right. Okay, so go for it. Tell us about who you chose.
How did I become a spokesperson for this? So we chose for a couple reasons. Mostly, it's like from start to finish, very well put together. Has good mission and vision. Didn't have a lot of holes in terms of future planning and what their plans are. And overall, it being done by an intern versus two attendings, we decided to go with the digital education elective from Stanford. So,
All right,
yeah.
nicely done. Doctor. All right, so well done, Dr. Mehring, but you are not the winner just went yet. So, Lauren, Dr. McCafferty, how does this work? Are you pulling up the QR code
Yes.
right now? Okay, so in a very secretive fashion that nobody can see, and so we just have to trust her. She's going to calculate all this for us right now.
Has everybody voted?
Oh, there's still people.
Did everybody
There's still
vote?
people voting.
Give it a minute.
Before, in previous years, you may remember we used to do this on social media and would have the voting up for a week, but it never worked out. So this way, all the voting's done now. If anybody needs more time, just raise your hands. Otherwise, and we'll make fun of you because you don't know QR codes and can't figure them out. But it looks like we might have everybody, Dr. McCafferty. Ooh, it's a split decision. What do you do? Are you going to revote to the top two? I think you have to. Right?
We can have a run.
Yeah, I think you've got to.
Yeah, let's- yeah.
Okay.
Can we post another response on here?
Okay.
Or just
This second, we're trying to figure out how to do this because it's really close. So,
I can pull up the time.
so we're gonna say it's between these two and do a runoff.
Yeah.
Okay, so so that's gonna be a runoff between William's presentation and Chris's presentation.
And can we just do the QR code again?
Yeah.
Do the presentations again.
Yeah. So can we delete these responses and then? Just like we're trying before you do the QR code kidding, we're
Yeah,
gonna try to
yeah.
figure out how to.
We're going to reset it. Dr. Milam, that was awesome. Where'd you go?
Yeah, yeah.
That was really amazing work. We are going to find you some funders somehow. But Dr. Nash, Dr. Mehring, stick around. We're going to put the QR code back up once we've reset it, and we'll vote again for either Dr. Mehring or Dr. Nash.
So I feel like the participants of the town said they want us to go. They don't want
Yeah.
to vote again.
Okay.
So we're gonna say it's split from the audience. Our vote was for William, so William
Is the winner.
William is the winner.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, there we go. Congratulations, William.
Save everybody the QR.
And William, so what's going to happen is we're going to feature you in SAEM Pulse, and then come on up. You were talking about the fact that med students live off of granola bars. There you go. And so you're going to leave here with a granola bar and a water bottle. Congratulations very much. Thank you all so much. We will see you again next year. Have a great rest of your conference.